The hardware is gonna, it's gonna do so much. It's gonna serve its purpose. It's gonna allow you to, run the software and applications that are developed on it. But if you're really gonna change the process of how somebody works and make somebody's job, I don't want to say easier because it's going to free up more difficult tasks for them to do, but gives them a benefit. And I always use the example here, these softwares aren't going into place to make you have to learn the ins and out of it. It's really just adding another tool to your tool belt. And we relate our software much to, going from the physical screwdriver to the impact driver or the power drill, right? How much time and efficiency you gain over that. My name's Ray Martin. I work in Providence, Rhode Island, and I am the Chief Technology Officer for Dimeo Construction Company.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Leaders in Tech podcast. I am your host, David Mansella. As everybody knows, this podcast is dedicated to share the knowledge and wisdom of leaders in technology that are really pushing the envelope to achieve greatness in the organizations they are working for and the people that they have under their wing so that we can create a better world. Today, we have one of those exceptional leaders in technology. Ray, welcome to the show.
Hey, David, thanks for having me.
Ray, for the audience, can you give me your full name? Where do you work? And what do you do for a living?
Sure. So my name's Ray Martin. I work in Providence, Rhode Island, and I am the Chief Technology Officer for Dimeo Construction Company.
You know, when we did this interview, you had the same picture behind you, and I was astonished at how beautiful that building was. Can you tell a little bit more about what's behind you?
Yeah, sure. So this is an example of one of our many projects we do, but this is the Citizens Bank headquarters, which is actually located in Johnston, Rhode Island. This was one of the earlier projects that the team built when I started my career here. So, I live in Johnston, so this project's a little dear to my heart.
So what is it that Dimeo do? Like what type of projects do you guys work on?
Yeah, so we operate out of primarily 3 states in New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Every once in a while, we'll venture north into New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. But we do all vertical, new construction, commercial construction. So if you're familiar with the area, if any of the listeners are in New England, you'll see a handful of our projects throughout Providence, throughout Johnston. We just built a 4.2 million square foot Amazon distribution center that looks like the Taj Mahal when you're driving up the interstate there.
4.2 million square foot warehouse. I cannot even imagine how big that is.
Yeah, and the most impressive part about that building isn't the footprint, but it is the technology and the automation that's actually going into it. Amazon's building these all across the country and all across the world, so we were fortunate enough to get the one when it came to our state. But it's a massive project. I was flying home and I recognized it from the airplane before we landed. So it's that big of a footprint and really special project for us.
That is fantastic. Ray, how long have you been working there?
I'm going into my 8th year at Dimeo Construction Company. Previously, I spent 7 years at Consigli Construction Company, so 15 years in the industry. I love it. It's a great industry, and when you think of tech leaders and construction, you might not think that's a good fit for someone in the information technology field. But we use tech across all our projects, how we build them, how we gather information, how we gather analytics, helps us put together our costs, our projections, our estimates. And I joke around now, so 25 years ago, we were strictly builders. And I make the joke that, we're a technology company that does construction now.
It's not actually a joke. If people don't have that mindset change, they will actually eventually go bankrupt because your competition is thinking the same way. How can I leverage technology in order to be ahead of the competition, regardless of what you do, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we're seeing it now. Some of our competitors and subs that don't have, contractors who might not have that tech stack are really falling behind when it comes to the bidding process. And We're by no means the very edge of technology when it comes through, but we do our best to keep up. We really think through our processes, how a new piece of software is going to impact the workflow. What's our return on investment with that piece of software? And really, how's it going to make our field users and the people on our team of putting this work into place more efficient in their time and more accurate? The days of, physical drawings and blueprints and sending documents back and forth and physical signatures and paper and permits are really all a thing of the past. And we're doing our best to digitize as much as we can to streamline that process. We've had, contract changes and change orders that were physical signatures years back that are now digital, and they went from 2 to 3 weeks turnover time to 2 to 3 hours turnover time. And that's a tremendous amount of savings for us.
That's amazing. Ray, how did you get into technology? Let's look back in time. Did you go to school for it? How did you fell in love with this career?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I went to high school from 99 to 2003. So really when that technology boom started. So I grew up with it. I understood how networks worked. I was always fascinated by technology. I was a hockey player growing up, and like most hockey players, when they're 13 years old, they think they're going to play professionally. So I chased that dream as long as I could. So when I got to my undergrad, I went to the University of Rhode Island, and I was a communication studies there. I had a lot of credits I had to transfer in. I was a management information systems major to start, and they dropped the program. And I really wanted to graduate and get on with my career. So I jumped in the communication studies program, which really benefited me when it came to public speaking, presenting, and really built a strong skill set. I was offered an opportunity at Consigli to implement a small tools tracking program. That program's called ToolWatch. So fresh out of college, and we are now in 2009, which again, after the crash in 2008 and the recession, really I wanted to get a job. So whatever you need me to do, let me jump in and do that. Was successful there, understand a little bit how databases worked, and was able to build this system and found, a couple $1 million worth of small tools, put it into a system, tracked it. So we knew, what asset was at what project, how long it's been there, where it needs its maintenance. And while I was doing that, I was in a separate section of the main office. I was up in what they call the yard, and I took care of all the technology needs up there because it was just something I was used to doing. So the opportunity came up to join the help desk down in the corporate office, and I jumped on that and realized my love for tech and decided that's what I want to do for a career. So I went on to Quinnipiac University and got my master's degree in information technology, and really that springboarded my career to where I am today.
That is beautiful. Now, I don't know why a university will drop a management of information systems career path, which
Yeah,
was so popular,
it was a little frustrating when it dropped. They changed it to entrepreneurship, which at the time wasn't really something that was in my interest. Maybe looking back, maybe it should have been. But it was, I had to make the decision. And again, I wanted to graduate and get moving on. So that's how we shifted. But it was a disappointment. I spent 1 year in the program and actually really enjoyed it. And it would have been really beneficial if they kept that at the time.
When I went to college, my first experience with college was in 1989. And there I had two career paths. I could become a systems engineer, or I could become a bachelor's in management information systems. That was the only two careers that you had in IT. And when I saw the engineering path, it was more like to building. You had to do a lot of electronics, building basically motherboards, building microprocessors. And it was fascinating to me. I actually took a couple of those courses in my management information systems path, but I quickly realized I wasn't in love with hardware. I wanted the creativity of making that hardware home for me and create automation on top of the hardware. And that's what this career gave me. Then I went to Canada and I had the same dilemma. Do I want to become actually a hardware engineer, or would I want to really go deep into the software cycle and take advantage of the hardware so that we can actually present solutions? And both are necessary, right? It's just that my calling wasn't per se in the hardware infrastructure networking. I know it's necessary. That's the infrastructure that our software runs on. But for me, was the creative part. And how do I actually automate? How do I make a person smile because this piece of software is making their life better, right?
Yeah, the hardware is gonna, it's gonna do so much. It's gonna serve its purpose. It's gonna allow you to, run the software and applications that are developed on it. But if you're really gonna change the process of how somebody works and make somebody's job, I don't want to say easier because it's gonna free up more difficult tasks for them to do, but gives them a benefit. And I always use the example here, these softwares aren't going into place to make you have to learn the ins and out of it. It's really just adding another tool to your tool belt. And we relate our software much to, going from the physical screwdriver to the impact driver or the power drill, right? How much time and efficiency you gain over that. So that's how we try to sell our new technology to our users. And it's been really successful for us.
Ray, when was the first time that you got into a leadership position where you were actually responsible for other people, not only yourself?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I've had great leaders and still have great leaders that have taught me a lot very quickly. Again, getting into this role fairly young took a lot of risk and reward from both parties. From Dimeo when they hired me, and for myself to see if I can take on that role. So at Consigli, I was fortunate enough to manage all our job sites up and down the East Coast. I spent a lot of time on the road, planes, trains, covering all that, and became too spread out. So I was able to start learning how to manage a team and allocate other resources to perform that. So I was probably late 20s when I started that, about 5 years into my career there. My last 2 years were really a leadership role. And then when the opportunity presented itself to be, at the time, the director of technology over at Dimeo, I jumped on that, and I had a great relationship with the CIO who's still there at Consigli. I still have a great relationship with him. And I presented the opportunity to him and I said, hey, what do you think? Do you think I should go after this? And he said, absolutely. And he gave me all the encouragement to go through it, helped me along the way. And then when I came over to Dimeo, it was just full speed ahead. I spent my first 6 years at Dimeo in that director of IT role. And about 18 months or so ago, I was presented the opportunity to become the chief technology officer, which was really the next step in my career that I was excited about and scared at the same time. There was a larger team, a lot more experienced team, an older team. So stepping into a field where my skill set was very low, I had to learn that I wasn't in there to actually do those physical activities that that team was doing. And that's managing our virtual design and construction team who build these amazing 3D, 4D models, logistics plans. The work they do is absolutely amazing. And they spent years in their career or in their schooling to learn how to do that. So navigating my role from IT and how we built that program down there and transitioning that over to our VDC world was a real challenge to get started off the bat. And I had to build the trust in my team. And I really relied heavily on them to kind of push our vision through. We're still doing that today, which is great. But it's been a exciting 15 years for me for sure, getting there. And again, the opportunity of Chief Technology Officer has really just exposed me to a whirlwind of different applications and softwares, but also really introduced me to how our user base uses these and the importance of getting it right the first time and understand what they do in the field. When you're in IT, or at least my experience when I started in IT, There's a lot of break fix. They'd call when they had an issue. You're making sure your networks are up, your firewall, your security, your email. You know, all those pieces are in place and your network's secure and locked down. But transitioning to the CTO role really fascinated me on how much we actually have an impact out there in the field.
Definitely. And the company you work for, since you are doing large building constructions in large scale, you guys must be on the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, right?
Yeah, we are. We're just shy of the $1 billion mark. So we're not quite there yet, but we're high. I'd say right around 700 million. We had a record year, which was great. That number seems to be growing this year. So I would envision us breaking that $1 billion barrier pretty quickly.
And that also proves that your role is not a small feat, right? Like you have to make a big responsibility. If one of those big projects fails, the company could go bankrupt, and they rely
Yeah,
on IT to make sure they succeed.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we all have our part in putting these buildings up, and it's great because I have a 3-year-old daughter at home, and she's at the fun age now, and we're driving by these buildings we built, and she'll be, Daddy built that, Daddy built that. It's like, well, yeah, kind of. I had a part, and that's good enough. And you have a lot of pride when you see these things going up. If a project goes south, which does happen, happens to every GC, no exception for Dimeo. If you don't have your right tools in place financially, even outside of the IT world, you don't have your checks and balances, your insurances, your coverages in there, it could be really damaging to a company. And a lot of companies have gone out of business due to a sour project or God forbid, a fatal injury or a fatal safety impact on the job has really damaged them. And we've worked with other software companies. I'll give an example. Billy for Insurance was started because a owner of a general contractor down in the South, I believe Louisiana, had a couple injuries and a fatality on the site. Didn't have the correct insurance to cover that type of incident, and really bankrupted his company. And then they went after his own assets, his houses and anything he had there, and was really in a tough time. So he turned that huge negative in his life into a positive and developed that software that we actually partner with and work with now. And they've been a great partner of ours for insurance compliance and making sure all our subcontractors have the correct insurance on site before they even get there. And it's a really, something I've learned in the CTO role. It's somebody's on your site and doesn't have insurance and something happens to that person, you're liable. And the damaging and the money that you could be liable for is could bankrupt you if you're not prepared for it. So that was just a great example of a negative turn to a positive using and created the software.
What a beautiful story, Ray. Thank you for sharing that. Imagine this man with this building company, and he not only went bankrupt, but they actually went after his personal assets, and how he was able to take that huge failure into an opportunity to build software so other companies don't go through the same problem. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. And I love working with companies, like that. Not to say that all the companies we work with are failed and started out of the ground, but there's a ton of startup and small application software companies that we work with. And the reason I love working with them so much is we have a voice and a lot of input on how that software works. And, we buy the Microsofts of the world and those license suites as they go, and you're really just a customer and a number there. But to work with the founder and the engineers and say, hey, if this software could do this, that would be beneficial. And they go back and build it and we test it out. There's at least half a dozen of those companies that we're working with right now. And I really enjoy working with them. Now, whether or not they get bought out in the future by the bigger companies, we don't know. But, at this time, they're really powerful tools and really powerful partners for us that I believe really sets us apart from some of our competition.
It's beautiful, and this is why I still do what I do, I
Yeah.
run multiple software companies, but the one that I'm most in love with is ISU Corp, and they build custom solutions for companies just like yours, or healthcare, or fintech. And we just take that vision from the business people, from the IT people inside those business, and make it a reality. And it's pretty much like your company, right? Like when you are there just to build somebody else's dream, once it's built, you become part of that dream. And that company is being around for 19 years now, and it's going stronger. And it's because there is still this need of people to rely on professional software companies to deliver something unique that will push them away from the competition, right?
Yeah. We did something that I've never seen on a project before, and it's in one of our promotional videos with Providence Basketball, their Ruane Fryer Development Center. And basically, we built their practice facility on their campus. And it's a very unique building, has a lot of features. But one thing they did, again, that I've never seen before is everyone who worked on the project was able to sign on this, basically on the siding of the building, and that was all engraved into the siding, so their names are going to be on that building forever, which I thought was a really nice gesture. So, if you're walking around campus and you're with, your kids or your parents or what have you, you can actually point to your name on that building and say, I had a part of this, I built this, that's where I am. So it was really powerful. I thought that was really neat and unique and a nice feature. And that wasn't just for Dimeo personnel, that was for every subcontractor and partner that was on that job.
Beautiful. We should build that into software. Imagine an about button on your application that says, graphic designer, business analyst, project manager, senior engineer, all the way down there. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't understand the amount of people it takes to build a piece of software, or for the gamers in the world that might be listening, when you beat a campaign of a game, you got a 20-minute credit screen of everything that went into that, and everyone's recognition. So I like that idea. That'd be pretty neat.
Okay. Ray, in your personal career, what has been the worst problem that you encounter, and how do you overcome it?
So the worst problem I've ever faced in my career was 2021, I believe, or maybe I forget if it was pre or post pandemic. So forgive me. I think it was pre-pandemic. We were hit with ransomware. We were hit with the Conti ransomware, and we had our safeguards in place. We had our email filters in place. I won't specify who, but at the end of the day, it still came through and it still encrypted our files. And fortunately, with our systems in place, we were able to really not impact our user base. There was a couple of applications that we had to rebuild and get through that. We're down for about a day or so. But as far as the 200 of our user base, 195 of them didn't even know what was happening in the back end.
Wow.
When we were notified, I was actually down at Yale University, another one of our clients, on a Monday morning. And I don't think I've ever driven faster up 95 to get back to Providence to get back in the office and assess the damage. But we went through, we had the ransomware note, just like you read about. If you haven't been impacted by it, you download a torrent browser, you upload your note, and you wait for a couple hours for someone to get back to you. And they want to negotiate a price. For us at the time, it was $2 million worth of Bitcoin. And they give us the data back. But fortunately, the data that was encrypted was really old archive data that we did have backed up to the cloud, but it wasn't anything we used. So, I kind of joked back and forth with them. I said I'd give you a couple grand just so I don't have to waste my time to pull it down. But that kind of X'd out that conversation, and we just went back into building, into recovery mode. And we have a DR solution, but things were working so well during the attack and kind of when we were assessing the damage. I was like, do I fail over and disrupt everything that's going on today and take people down who aren't impacted? Or do we try to fix it and recover in the back end? And so we went with the latter option there. It was a pretty fascinating process. It goes straight after your backup servers. It deletes all your backup jobs if it gets in there. It goes into your domain controllers. It wipes out the information from there. It really cripples your system. Which what didn't help us is our systems were legacy, and about a month before we were hit, we signed an agreement with Nutanix for new hardware, new hypervisor, new servers from them. So it was exciting. It's like, hey, this is our biggest risk. We're taking care of it. We're getting rid of it. We're moving. We were just about, 60 days too late when that process was going to happen. So getting support for the legacy servers we had was impossible. So we really patchworked it until our Nutanix environment came in. But just long story short, that ransomware came in from an email. User clicked on it, provided information. So they grabbed username and password. At the time, computer was left on overnight through the weekend in the office. Another user's computer was left on that was running a legacy application. That application had admin credentials tied to it. Again, it was one of the ones that we were getting ready to replace. Obviously inherited a very old system, but it was running, and that was a mistake on our part. But that's how it grabbed some admin credentials and was able to really navigate laterally throughout our systems. We were up, I want to say, about 4 days in a row, going through rebuilding everything. But on that last day, I remember, drove home, felt very good where we were, stopped at a restaurant, and probably had the best glass of scotch I think I've ever had in my life. So it was
the stress.
Yeah, so that was my most stressful, I want to say, I guess, physical thing that's happened to our environment. Again, we battled just like everybody else, phishing, malware, and denial of service attacks. We just had one that was trying to get through us last week. And it's funny, you start seeing like these little things that are off, and it's like, hey, that's not supposed to operate that way, or this is off. And we're a lot better at jumping on those quickly now and identifying that root cause and really getting ahead of it. I don't wish the ransomware on my worst enemy, but it was, as much as it was terrible to go through, and the impact it could have had and the damage it really could have done. And God forbid if it got to secure information, it really could have damaged the company publicly. But all that was really under compliance and followed and protected and wasn't impacted at all. So, as much as it was terrible, we also were lucky, and it was a great learning experience to understand, what really happens when you go through an attack. Because you can read and watch these webinars and talk to who you have and listen to this podcast, but until you go through that, nothing's really going to prepare you on how you're going to react to that.
And this is when I always have to apply my faith. So I'm a man of faith, and I follow Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And he always taught us that we need to forgive. The only actually way that God can forgive us is if we're willing to forgive people that damage us, right? That makes terrible damage to us. And I'm saying these things because as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to get so mad. You, as this responsible for IT, how can they be asking for $2 million? Like, this is absurd. And these people deserve to go to hell. This is my human reaction. But in my spiritual faith, I have to say, I forgive you. Because when you forgive, what you do is that you release all that horrible bitterness out of your system. I've known people that they don't forgive and they get sick. They even develop cancer, And I'm eating my own words because this happened to us too. We had a legacy. Everything, we're a technology company, right? Everything was super protected, hyper protected on the cloud. We were cloud first since 2011. But we still had a legacy backup system that I didn't know we still had in one of our remote offices. and it was a NAS server. And somehow, through ransomware, they got access to this thing, and the credentials, exactly what you said, the credentials were embedded in this device, and they were able to corrupt all of our data. It was a mess. But we've recovered within 2 days. We recovered. We never paid ransomware. And now we know better. And we are a technology company. Now imagine asking the business to invest X amount of dollars to upgrade your infrastructure, because otherwise you could get hacked. They will always say no because they don't see the benefit until something happens to them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and again, the original system that was set up was before I started here. But I think the mindset at the time was, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right? It's expensive. Right? It's a capital expense to reduce it, hundreds of thousands, and depending on the size of your company, millions of dollars into it. So they wanted to ride that out. And I've met with my boss before, and I detailed out, he asked me what's most vulnerable, what would happen, and where would it come in. And, we met probably 3 months before, when we were going through the Nutanix negotiations and everything. And I detailed out, this is how it would come in. This is what would impact it. This is how long it would take us to recover. And these are our weak points. And sure enough, it was like I wrote the script for the ransomware to come in, because it was step by step how I identified that process was going to happen. So I was like, I did not do this. I was just telling you this is how it could happen, and that's the way it went through. To get back to your point on, forgiveness. I get very emotional sometimes when it comes to different personalities and emails, and obviously going through the ransomware track, your emotions can really take over in that event. And when you let that happen, you're not going to think clearly. You're not going to think of how all these, pieces go back together, and how the steps you have to take, and who you need to call, and what partners you need to bring in, and how slowly you have to communicate that to your leadership team to make them feel comfortable that, we're still in hands. And if you're enraged with emotion that I can't believe this bad actor is extorting my company for this amount of money and got into my system, and I can't believe all the money I invested to protect it, it still got through. If you let all those thoughts creep in, you're never going to get to your recovery quick. And you skip steps. You might not be as secure as you bring it back in. So, I have, Vinny works on my team as well, down in IT. He's the IT manager down there. And Denise Heldes as well, who's on my team, and they were tremendous assets when we went through that process. And we stayed countless nights, hours and hours and hours in recovering. And we almost like an emergency scene. If you go to a car accident or your house is on fire, fire chief comes in, police chief comes in, and they're really the point of contact on that site. And, the other firefighters or police officers are taking direction from that person. And, that's how they put that fire out, or, correct the car accident and get the people to safety. It was the same type of mentality. Personalities were set aside. If we had any type of disagreements on projects that were going on at the time, and I was trying to do it one way and my team was trying to do it another way, all that went to the side. And it was, okay, let's tackle this issue. Let's work together. Ray, you're the point. Whatever you need us to do, let's do it, and let's get it recovered. And, it was high stress environment. Obviously a lot on the line, but it was very powerful having them there with me, because if they weren't, no way I would have recovered by myself.
Mm-hmm. And that, in great stressful situations is what real heroes are formed. And it's also when the companies get together, and if they work together and they manage their feelings, their emotions, like you said, and they just work on the solution, that's when you thrive. And it makes you a better company afterwards, because now you're going to have all these checks in places. You're not going to let legacy systems to bog you down anymore, because the high risk, and the risk is actually very real, right?
Yep.
So,
And it's
Right?
not slowing down.
Is no,
Uh,
and the better protection, the better the hackers are, right? And so it's this crazy fight. And but remember, the forgiveness part is always key. And it's not only for business, only also for life. When
yeah,
you stop forgiving and you start having remorse and regrets, the next thing is an illness. And then the next thing is death. It's a life and death situation, right?
yeah.
Ray, thank you so much for your time. We're approaching the 40-minute mark, and I really want to respect your time. I know you're a very busy professional. I'm going to ask you one last question before we finish the podcast.
Sure.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
If I had a billboard in front of our business owner here.
Or in front of a highway that is very busy, right? So,
Yeah. Okay.
in other words, what would you tell? What is the best advice you will tell people in the world?
Oh man, I wasn't ready to answer this question. It would be simple. It would be just keep going, right? Life happens, stress happens, but you just keep going. Sun comes up tomorrow.
Beautiful. That's how we need to live our life, because life is a path full of obstacles, failures, but through those failures is when we achieve success. So we gotta keep going. The Bible says the just falls 7 times, but it also picks himself up 7 times more. And that's what it's all about. When you fall, never stay down. Keep going. Pick up yourself and figure it out, right?
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Ray, for your time, for your wisdom. If people like to follow you or ask you more questions, are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Ray Martin, Dimeo Construction Company. Probably the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic.
But
All right.
all right, David, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for shining the light. Your life career, it was fast. Very few people make it to the top level in IT in 15 years. To give you an idea, for me, I was in the middle. I wasn't even close to that. So thank you for your experience, and you're inspiring a lot of people that want to be where you are. And that's what this is all about.
I appreciate it. Still have a long way to go. We're not done yet here.
Thank you so much, Ray. Have a beautiful rest
Thank
of
you,
the
Dave.
day. God
Bye.
bless.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.